Okay, so that is Luke Rhoden talking about the discovery that he learned that his father had been killed. Donald Scott, who you heard from previously, actually found the body. Let me bring my guests back into it. Matt Mangino, law and crime legal analyst, is staying with me, and I'm also joined by my great friend Lisa Lockwood, crime scene analyst, former SWAT. Just an incredible guest, as you know her very well on this show. First, Lisa, let me start with you. And when I said it was the daughter was Hannah Gilley, it's actually Hannah Mae Rhoden. That was the mother of Jake Rhoden's child, okay? And supposedly he had, according to the state, sexual contact with her, obviously, when she was underage, and therefore that's why there's some of the charges relating to her. But let me talk to you. The jury is listening to this emotional story from people who are members of their community. How do they react?
Oh boy. Yes, exactly, because they stayed local. And now everybody obviously was exposed to this as it happened because this was a massacre. This happened at 4 different residences. 8 people were killed. Children were involved, custody battle. And we already know that Jake had already pled out, and he was the source of all of this, were it not for him trying to get custody of his child that he had with Hannah. So we've wiped out complete families. This is what we're witnessing right now. So you know that it's a sore spot for everybody there. Emotionally, what they lost, family members that include extended family members who lost people. It's an awful, awful tragedy. And to finally start to see some justice taking place is so important, I know, to that community. Everybody wants to see these family members locked up and be able to put it behind them.
Okay, so let me bring both of you in on this. You know that I have been on a rant the last 2 days because the judges allowed law enforcement, public servants to opt out of camera coverage to tell the story of this community, which was terrorized. They thought maybe there was this was drug killings, that everyone was at at risk here in this community, and yet you have people who are actual victims agreeing to be on camera here. I want to get both of your thoughts. Lisa, let me go back to you, and then I'm going to talk to Matt.
Yeah, so police officers are public employees. And my whole thought on all of this is what is it that they want to protect? They're police officers who responded to a scene, they're investigators, detectives. Why would they opt out for that? And people need to have closure, and to not be able to actually see them testify, I think it's important. And to go ahead and take away the audio. Members of the community want to watch this. They want to see what is happening, and they want to make sure that justice is done and follow the case just like everybody else. So I don't believe that that should be a right for police officers who wear a badge, are considered public employees, to have that opportunity to opt out.
Okay, Lisa Lockwood, I think the language was a little more colorful to begin with, that George Billy Wagner, that's the dad of Jake, the husband of Angela, and also the father of George Wagner IV, who's on trial right now, said if, somebody ever messed with him, or effed with him, or tussled with him, that he'd have to shoot him. So tell us how the prosecution used this in their case.
Wow. So, yeah, so bringing a gun to something that could be resolved either with words or calling the police or using your fists, it's what's called overkill. You don't want that. You don't want that to come out in that setting. But now they have it. They absolutely have it, and they know that that's the way that this family, well, at least George, operates, that he will kill somebody if he needs to. And we clearly see the case as we're going forward that that's exactly what happened. And those were his words.
Okay, so Lisa Lockwood, that's what you normally find. As you know, in trials, a direct takes a long time, then cross can take a really long time, or it can be short. Here was a very focused cross on the marijuana growing operation, whether it would give rise, I guess the defense will argue, for either a drug cartel to come in and kill the family, or for Jake Wagner in some type of dealings because he was interested in the marijuana growing operations to come in and have a dealing, killing the family, a motive to lie. But here, then you had the redirect and you had the recross. What was the purpose of both of those?
Uh, Actually, you got me on that. The technicality of what they were trying to look for, I don't believe came through, because listen, we've already got Jake, who's incarcerated, who already pled guilty. We've got two more case. We've got this case, and we also have George Sr.'s case that's going through. We have cooperating witnesses who talked about who was involved and who did what. So this whole theory regarding a cartel and Jake really just wanting the empire, the marijuana empire, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because we know we are in the middle of a custody dispute, and as the witnesses and the cooperating witnesses had come forward and they had been deposed, we discovered that that was actually the case.
And Lisa, let me play devil's advocate in the court because I'm kind of trying to think ahead of what they could be asking for. Could the defense say in some way that, of course, it wasn't the family who killed everyone because they didn't have an exit plan, and if they were such meticulous planners and killers, and they bought shoes and jammers and all that, according to the prosecution, that they would have had an exit plan, so therefore it had to be Jake on his own seeking maybe the marijuana growing operation, or it had to be a drug cartel?
Well, it's not just Jake. We already know that because of the evidence that came forward in Jake's trial and the fact that there were shoes bought and there were other members that were involved, and family members, as I said before, had discussed that. But the exit plan would have been smart. It would have been great to say, yes, this is somebody who wanted to get their small fortune, take over all of that. A cartel is involved in this, and it has nothing to do with the family. And what do cartels generally do? They do wipe out everybody and leave no witnesses. But I'll tell you what, cartels also take out babies, because that's how ruthless they are. And the fact that Jake's child was spared and the other children were spared, there was something emotionally involved with this case.
Yeah. And then going back to the plea deal, here you have the prosecutors giving Jake a deal, maybe first, and maybe because they needed him to get to everybody else. But the death penalty will come off the table if he testifies truthfully and satisfactorily to the benefit of the prosecution and also his mother. And they're also taking off for George, I guess, George Jr., George Wagner IV, I should say, if he is convicted. So does that indicate to you that the evidence was weak unless they had Jake testify, that they needed to make that deal with the head devil, shall we say?
Well, it would have been great to hear the testimony of the police officers and the sheriff. That's what we were missing in this. And I know that we'll be able to have access to the transcripts later to show what that evidence is. So I don't know what the police actually had, aside from the shoes, the purchases, and that sort of thing, which is circumstantial and it's helpful. The guns, the ammunition, what was used, and that sort of thing. So all of those forensics. And we also do have the forensics from the telephone usage. So all of that came through fruition, and I think those are things that can help. But whether or not their case was strong enough to go forward without having somebody cooperate, I don't have the answer to that.
Okay, so Lisa, let's go back on what you mentioned, since we have a little bit over a minute left here. We have people in the courtroom who can watch the old-fashioned way, and yes, you can get the transcripts. But the telling of the story, to whether or not the prosecution's story is supported by evidence, we don't hear from law enforcement or any of the public people, or most of the public servants that have testified so far, because they have opted out of testifying, which is their right under this very archaic situation, our court rule there. Yet the court in Ohio says it's going to be open to the public, but this isn't really open to the public. You're a police officer. Would you in your capacity ever have opted out when we're trying to shine a light on the good work that police officers do and just let the family who are grieving bear the burden here of the public information?
Right, it does. I believe it does tarnish a police officer's image. Why would they not want that? I don't think that any police officer is in any type of danger. Their lives are in jeopardy based on their testimony. They're not being stalked out by a cartel or anything like that. This is a case that they followed through on, and let's go ahead and just show the evidence, show the public, and allow the public to understand the way that all of this unfolded. And it's unfortunate that it's not happening in this case.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, since we're trying to shine a light, as I said, on the good work that police officers do, but apparently in this case they don't want to shine a light on themselves, and it's unfortunate because this involves the murder of 8 family members. Lisa Lockwood, you will be staying with me. We're going to take a quick break here at the Law and Crime Network. We have several trials going, as you know, Alex Jones in Connecticut, and this case in Ohio, the Pike County Massacre. When we come back, I will give you an update of where we are in both of those cases, and we'll see what trial we elect to go into. Stay with us. We're the Law and Crime Network.